Hi, I'm very excited to invite our guest speaker for today. Her name is Emily Ray. She's British. She's lived abroad most of her life because of her dad's job. She has two kids and four cats, and two of them are rescued from a foster home, and one new German Shepherd who they are trying to help to get back to health now. And she's a teacher of French, and she even loves photography. And her kids are wonderful. One of them is Sam. He's 5 years old. He has Angelman syndrome. And Maya is 6 years old, and she's neurotypical. And she even loves to solve puzzles. She loves traveling. She loves gardening. So
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for speaking to me.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me.
And I would like to ask you a few questions, Em. Can you recall any memory like when someone has looked at Sam's smiling face and complimented him on that?
Yes, absolutely. The key characteristic for Angelman syndrome is that the individuals tend to have a very happy demeanor. This doesn't mean that Sam is always happy. If, for example, he is upset about something, he will let you know. He will make quite a loud sound, and you can tell that he's not happy. He doesn't speak, but this does not stop him from communicating. So he is known for his happy, smiley face. This is what I've been raising awareness about, is the link between Sam, Angelman, and his smile. Because it's something that people tend to remember. And so he gets recognized because of the raising awareness I've done. If we go out, for example, he will be walking along as normal and someone will come up to him and recognize who he is. And they usually say that he's even nicer to meet in person than just on a photograph on a social media post, because he gets very excited about meeting new people. So he thinks it's wonderful when people come and say hi, and people don't forget him. Really, they really don't. Whether it is a social media post or whether it's in person. So recently, a mum. A family had a child of 10 months old diagnosed with AS in Dubai. And by the very next day, 4 of her friends had been in touch with me, all separately, saying, my friend's child has just been diagnosed with Angelman syndrome. The only thing we could think of when we heard that syndrome was Sam and his smile. So that's the job that that I do. I reach families, obviously, of children who are newly diagnosed with AS or with other conditions as well. They like to know, for example, doctor information and so on. Sorry, the kitten. It's also about raising awareness and educating people so that if that situation does arise, people remember Sam and his smile. And so that's very important.
I can vouch for that because I met Sam too. He's adorable.
Yes, he's not easily forgettable. Bless him. Yes.
And the second question I would like to ask you is, when was Sam diagnosed, and what was your immediate reaction as his parents?
Okay, so he was diagnosed on the 6th of April 2017. It's a day that I remember as D-Day, diagnosis day. It's a date that you never forget, because he hadn't been talking and he wasn't crawling and walking and so on. So we thought originally he wasn't speaking because he couldn't hear. So we did all the tests to see if he was hearing or not, and he could hear fine. So somebody finally put us in touch with a developmental child specialist, or child development specialist, sorry, and he diagnosed him within about 2 minutes. Because once you've actually seen a child with AS, the facial features are quite recognizable. He has a very wide smile. He has gaps in his teeth. When he smiles, his mouth goes downwards a little bit. It doesn't go up like yours and mine. And so if you have treated a child with AS before, you can recognize them. So luckily for us, the doctor had seen 3 other patients with AS in the UK before. And so he diagnosed him clinically immediately. And then we did the genetic testing, which obviously just confirmed it. At the time I was with my mother, it was the last day of her Easter break that year, three years ago. And we'd never heard of Angelman syndrome. Nobody knows about it. Everybody knows about Down syndrome. Everybody knows about autism now, which is wonderful. But autism is 1 in 70, Down syndrome is 1 in 700, and AS is 1 in 15 to 20,000. And the reason why Sam has AS makes it actually 1 in 375,000 live births, for the reason that Sam has AS. So nobody's heard of it. So my mother and I just sat in the waiting room of the hospital and we Googled it, because there's nothing else to do. You don't know what this is. You've got absolutely no idea what it is. And then at the time, this was in Dubai, he was diagnosed in Dubai, and we lived in Fujairah. So my mother and I drove back to Fujairah in total silence. We didn't actually say anything to each other the entire drive home. Like, there's nothing to say. You don't know what to say. Your whole world has just completely changed from one moment to the next, and Google is telling you that your child will never speak, which is most likely. But then it also says things like, for example, they'll never walk, they'll never climb, they'll never do this, they'll never do that. So it's a very difficult diagnosis, because you have to come to terms with the fact that the child you thought you had and the life you thought he was going to have is actually going to happen. Luckily, it's 3 years later, and he runs, he walks, he climbs. He almost climbs too much now because he gets into tricky situations. We have to keep him safe. But it's never a good idea to rely on Google. It's far better, for now, for these families. I've met 2 families very recently, actually, both in Dubai, and it's much more reassuring for them to meet Sam now that he's, age 5, and to see that there is a positive, approach after diagnosis. I mean, diagnosis is just that one moment in time, and you have to give yourself about approximately 6 months to come to terms with what it means. But after that, these families that I met recently, and as I said, there were 2 of them, which is quite unusual, obviously, they were able to see, that life goes on, and that Sam is this wonderful child, So it's not the end of the world to get the diagnosis.
And how do you find Sam different from children his age?
So Sam has the same kind of cheeky nature that some of the children have. He just has cognitive impairment and some developmental delays, which impact that. But if you think of him as a problem solver, for example, he recently worked out that if you put 2 cushions, one on top of the other, he can reach the area between the kitchen and the living room, and he can get into the kitchen. So he is a typical, what I'd sort of call, mischievous little boy, in that sense, that he will try to do things in his own way and his own manner, and he is developing strategies for trying to achieve what he wants to achieve. So he is able, I wouldn't say he plays with other children, but he's able to run alongside them, or he plays in the swimming pool. And it's very important to make sure that the children who surround him and the children that meet him both understand but also celebrate his differences, and so they become far more kinder and more empathetic, and they learn, and they gain from meeting Sam and from being with Sam.
What message would you like to give to the mothers whose kids are diagnosed with Angelman syndrome?
That it's not, that in a sense, it's a positive, because it's not a life-limiting condition, number one. So it is not something that washes over you with sadness and grief at the same time as the diagnosis. You know that there is no medical, real, very strong medical issues associated with AS for the majority of the individuals. For some of them, it can be problematic with seizures and other medical things. For example, they can't swallow properly and they can't feed properly, but that is generally the minority. That's and so you just have to find out a lot of information. It really helps. Knowing some information and knowledge is power. So that really helps you. Understanding the genetics of what's going on, understanding and getting the diagnosis really, really helps, because then you know what you're dealing with. So you know why he wasn't sleeping 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night. You know why he's not talking. You know why he is walking the way he does. You know why. And so that's really important. Getting the actual diagnosis is a very important step. And it's not about putting a label onto a child. It's about having the knowledge and the power of being able to treat and to deal with and to set up therapies for this specific syndrome. Not for a syndrome that's similar, even though, for example, he has low muscle tone, so you can do exercises for that. But it is very important to have that diagnosis, because then you can reach out to the families within the Angelman community. It's very, very uplifting to be able to meet other families whose children have AS. We can't, emphasize that enough, that if anyone is reading this and suspects anything genetic is going on, or global developmental delay, to see a doctor and to try and get the most information that they can, because then they can reach out to the people who can help them and support them.
What are your thoughts like for a family dealing with a person of determination at home? What do you think the role of the family is?
I think it's very important for the parents and the family to not deny what is going on. I think that's the number one step, is to accept and to realize what is going on. Acceptance might take a little while, but it is important to understand that this is not going to go away. So pretending it doesn't exist is not going to help your child, and it's not going to help the people around you. So raising awareness of AS has been a very cathartic way, in a sense of feeling that Sam's life has purpose, and that he's here for a reason, and he's here to educate people, to bring people together, to make people smile, to make people think about families who are not typical families. People don't really have much connection with people of determination in general. And so the families have an important role to play in making sure that their child is not isolated, and making sure that other people become aware of their child, but also that they learn to teach acceptance, and that they can teach other children how to behave with Sam, for example. It's extremely important for the children who are our future, and if they come into contact with someone like Sam, they're likely to remember him, and who knows what their career paths may be in the future, and what impact they might have. They could become the next researcher for Angelman syndrome. I mean, you never know. So it's very important for the families to not isolate themselves. It's important to be part of a community.
Can you please tell us about your project Smile with Sam, and how it helps to spread awareness?
So the project Smile with Sam, it's on Instagram.com. It's called smile.with.sam.tv. AS. And it's a photo project that is bringing together people of determination and also pets of determination. So for those people who don't know the term, it's for people with special needs, for example, and animals as well. So the animals, for example, have got 2 legs or 3 legs, or they're blind, or they're deaf, or they have neurological conditions. And there's a wide variety of people as well who've been participating. So for example, with Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or other genetic conditions. And it came about just because I saw a dog who was walking on wheels. He's got wheels to help him because his back legs don't work properly. And I just saw him, I drove past, I had this idea. Immediately I drove back and said, hello, I know you don't know me. I've just had this idea about what we could do. Now, the irony is that I actually have a cat with 3 legs. I've had this cat with 3 legs for 10 years now. And to me, that cat is no different than the other cats. So that's why the idea is that these people and animals are no different, you know, or they are, sorry, different, but they're not less. And so we've been taking photographs either of Sam meeting them or the people or the animals themselves, depending if it wasn't okay for Sam to meet them. It depends on the circumstances. So we've been doing various shoots of various people and putting them all on Instagram, and it's been picked up by the, you know, the national newspapers. And so it's really important that people can see that these people and pets, they're part of our lives, you know, they're part of our society. And as I'm sure you know, it's very important to be part of that society. So I'm really enjoying taking the photographs and meeting everybody. And Sam is really enjoying meeting these, you know, these dogs. And I've discovered that he has this real affinity for animals, in dogs, slightly bigger dogs in particular, that he can reach out to, and he can grab them and he can push them, and they're not going to fall over or, you know, run away from him. And I swear that they can sense that his brain is not a neurotypical brain. I swear it, because there's a dog, you know, that the owner said, well, he doesn't really tolerate children, and he doesn't like to drop the ball. And that's all he was doing with Sam. He was letting Sam stroke him and touch his nose and touch his mouth. And he was dropping the ball for him and waiting for Sam to do something with the ball. And so these are animals. I know that his brain waves are not the same as, you know, a typical neurotypical person's. And I'm 100% sure they can feel that and they can sense that, so they're much more tolerant of him.
Thank you so much for speaking to me. It was really nice.
You're most welcome. It was very nice to chat. Everything.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.